missed you. Last year.
Oh, I was out of town. Yeah, I was one meeting I want actually.
Well, we ended up pushing off the.
I mean, it was a lot of time.
Which was the juicy one. Another really bad. We just had the staff.
How are you? Where'd you go? See you, Chris?
First day having them.
The presentation.
Yeah.
And then we just.
Yeah, they're in their light restriction, but as the night goes on, unfortunately.
I'm gonna have everybody introduce themselves.
You were actually at my door.
It's a map. It
was a lucky day for you. My wife said she couldn't buy anything. She said you can.
Oh, it made them sick.
Yeah. He's got a knock courts of Shannon.
Yeah. So over by Palmer, further on down.
Further up, but in
Near
that
Campbell,
general
right?
Further up.
Okay.
Right. Go build it at 0.7.
What can afford to live. There's no big discussion these days. Where are you? Are you in Shandon?
No. I live in the single-family homes right across from Barton Oaks.
Okay.
So 1980s houses.
Yeah. These are mostly 78, 79.
I've been in Danielle's Sherp's house. So you're very well. I need to tell you about my conversation.
There's hickory and hemlock. After all these years, it's like right
I already had this conversation.
one of them's a public street. I shouldn't be. One of them is actually a public street. Okay, then that's goes to the town.
They're attached to her.
Right. That one's a little bit different. It's smaller than the other. So I got a call. Some of those won architectural awards in their day. Now, there's 47 years ago. But those were award-winning houses. Some of them. Arkansas. And we're Arkansas.
You can say trying to begin.
It runs.
All right, guys. Good evening. It is 7 o'clock. Sheila will start elbowing me if I don't start on time, so I gotta get going. Welcome. We're so glad you guys are here. I wanted to let you guys know that council members Baker and Delightful are both not going to be present this evening, and apparently it's a good thing because I don't know where they would sit. But this is our annual joint work session with the Planning Commission, and we have some new faces on the Planning Commission, some new faces on council, and so I think it's always good to go around and introduce yourself. So I'm Lisa,
Sheila,
Melissa,
George.
Michael.
Lisa,
Marcia,
Kelvin.
Sean.
Bill.
Paul.
Pradeep,
Signe.
Bill.
2 Lisas and 2 Bills. All right. Well, thank you for doing that. There's a lot of news going on. So I guess we'll call the meeting to order. I should have done that before I started talking. And the first item is the joint work session, and our planning commissioners are here. And I think John Irish, is this the John Irish show about the CIP?
Yes, it is.
All right. Is there while he's getting set up, is there anything that any of the planning commissioners want to say while you've got our undivided attention? It's your chance.
thank you for including us always.
We're glad to have you. Seems like we just did this. I can't believe how quickly it comes around. All right. Thank you.
Well, good
Take it
evening,
away.
everyone, planning commissioners and town council. My name is John Irish. I'm the Deputy Director of Public Works. And I'm here to give you a mid-year status report on the FY 1924 capital improvement program. I'm going to start with some very basic stuff for some folks that have not been through this before. And what this represents is just to give you a general idea of how we approach projects within the town and what's involved. Almost all of our CIP projects are going to start with, which is on the left-hand side, what we call project definition. This is where we scope and come up with the parameters that we want to go forward with. next step would be the concept, and depending on the type of project, that could involve outside consultants. It would involve, obviously, probably multi-departments within the town. Once that is defined and to be more specific, we now have what we call a design specification. This would be, of course, where we start getting into the actual nitty-gritty of the project. Again, depending on the project, it would probably a lot of times involve outside consultants. It includes our specifications, which are the written documents that are more detailed to support drawings. And then once we are in a certain stage of the design, we'll feel comfortable with what is going to be required. And if we use a roadway project or some sort of horizontal project, typically this is when we would identify any acquisitions of right-of-ways, easements, utilities that need to be relocated, any of those sort of features. Once that identified, and that would also become part of our design and bid documents. We would then, depending on the situation, involve town attorney or outside consultants as well to help us put together any sort of deeds and plats we might need. We'll be coordinating, obviously, with utility companies as required, and that work has to typically happen before we want to put our contract package or our bid packages together and go out for bidding purposes. Once a project is into that phase, then we will advertise it. We will receive bids from outside contractors, and being in the state of Virginia, we typically are going to be required to go with the lowest responsible and responsive bidders. And that would then come to the town council for an award with a staff report. Assuming everything is in order, that would be authorized and awarded by the council. That then puts us into starting the actual construction. The construction administration involves us working as project managers for the most part for these projects. Even if we have outside consultants, typically they are to support, and most of the project management will occur by the town Department of Public Works staff. At the completion of the construction project, we would then go into closeout, which is the process where we finalize all of our documents, all of the billings, warranties, O&M manuals, etc., final reimbursements if it's a grant-funded project, and that would be the completion.
John, thank you for that. This isn't my first one, and that was really helpful to see all the steps.
Again, this is the same sort of circumstance. The only thing here is I'd just like to point out in that concept and project definition phase, a lot of times our community development folks and staff will be the ones that will be doing a lot of the work because of the planning aspect of it. This also is where we start our funding process, depending on outside funding. A lot of our town infrastructure projects involve either VDOT or federal highway funds, involves local funds from sources such as the NVTA, Northern Virginia Transportation Association, or other sources could be from the county. Fairfax County has funding that we also can get from them sometimes. Once we move into the other phases, 3, 4, 5, and 6, for the most part, that is all going to be between consultants and agencies if we are using outside funding and DPW staff. And then at the very end, where we have the construction admin and closeout, again, that mostly is with DPW staff. For the FY 1924 capital improvement projects, I've broken these up into a couple of different categories. What I'm going to outline is what has happened in the time frame from January of 18 to December of 18. In the downtown area, we have 4 projects that are in various stages. Downtown Streetscapes Phase 3, which is the final phase, is in design and starting the right-of-way easement acquisition phase. Eldon Center Street intersection is at the same phase. Design is basically complete. We're just starting our right-of-way acquisition. and utility relocation. Eldon Monroe intersection project is also in the design phase. That's probably about 75 to 80% done in the design. That project should not involve any right-of-way or easement requirements, or minimal if we do. And then the utility undergrounding project is the project to basically take all our overhead utilities and put them underground. The majority of the duct banks or the infrastructure of where those utilities would go is completed. Now we are strictly at the mercy of Dominion and getting the finalized design to a point where they will be ready to authorize construction and come to us for that sign off on the authorization. Metro Rail improvement projects. We have the Trails to Metro. This is the trail from Worldgate Drive to the Metro Pavilion. That is probably going to be going out to bid in March. We have one small easement that we have to finalize. Herndon Parkway, Van Buren Street intersection. And that project as well is probably 90% design. We've had some stormwater management design issues that cropped up kind of late that we're finalizing. We have started the utility relocation process and also the right-of-way acquisition phase for that. Metro Rail bus phase, as we call it, is also probably 80 to 90% complete in design. We've started the right-of-way and utility relocation process with that. We have some work to do with that based on some appraisals we've had done. And then finally, Van Buren Complete Streets. That project is also in the design phase. It's probably about 70%, 75% design complete. That project has a little bit of an unusual feature that it, because of the funding, has to be advertised for bid and under construction by October of this year in some way, shape, or form to satisfy the requirements of the federal funding that we have for that. So that is definitely under design. Other CIP projects, the VDOT projects that are being administered by VDOT, we separate those out because these do not require as much of the Department of Public Works or towns hands-on management. Now, we are directly involved in the review and commenting and asking questions, but as far as actually the design effort, it's not contracted with the town. Herndon Parkway Spring Street intersection, that is well underway in design. I would guess probably about the same, 75, 80%. They have finalized, I believe, almost all the easement right-of-ways that are going to be required for that, and the utility relocation. That should be getting underway shortly. East Eldon Street widening improvement, that as well, it's probably about 75% design complete. Again, we are expecting that will start with the utility relocations, and there is undergrounding as a part of that to probably hopefully start sometime in the next, by the end of this year, I would think would be optimistic a little bit. That's what we're shooting for. The WNOD trail lighting phase 2. This is the section of the trail lighting from Ferndale to Crestview. That is complete. That was actually just energized within the past week. The municipal center server room HVAC upgrade was completed in the early summer, late spring. Downtown sidewalk replacement is ongoing. We did our second phase of that this year. That was to do the replacement of the brick on the remaining sections of Station Street and Pine Street, and then a little section on Monroe on the west side. Valley Lake sewer relining was completed for the first part. That was from Center Street here by the Municipal Center up to about Herndon Parkway. We restored all the stone facing on the cemetery fence pillars. We have bid the 3rd Street water tank painting and rehabilitation project this past fall. And as soon as the weather breaks and they have the communication antennas relocated or removed. We'll be starting that probably in March. Shannon Park Trail is a part of actually the bigger project, but this is just by itself a separate project for us. And that is to basically asphalt trail from the perimeter of Shannon Park Trail on down to where it ties into the trail at Willgate. That has been designed and should be ready to go out to bid again this spring, hopefully March, April time. Going on, the Carroll Cabin restoration was completed this past spring. That project completed the pointing up of the stone exterior, put a new roof on it, stabilized it, basically to make it weather tight until such time that there's a decision on what wants to happen to it going forward. We completed replacement of the community center bleachers and gym floor. We did complete a feasibility study for a storage facility for the police department, 397 Herndon Parkway. We're also completing a study on upgrading the server room and computer room HVAC over there as well. And we're right now in the process of starting the redesign. Essentially is done, but the actual construction of configuring the community development office space on the second floor in this building. And then as part of our normal annual CIP, which is funded through VDOT paving project, that, as you may know or not know, didn't have as much completed this year as we'd hoped because we had difficulties with our contractors and obviously with our torrential downpours of rain all the summer. But we did finish Eldon Street from Sterling Road to Herndon Parkway. And then we did the entrance to Bruin Park in the parking lot and a section of Virginia Avenue from Alabama Drive to the dead end. And now I'm going to go forward and just show you what is kind of modeled after our CIP document that you're all familiar with. It will show you just the way that document sets up. For those, again, that may not be familiar, if you look at our CIP document when you get to the summary page, what these lists and kind of spreadsheet-looking documents show you are the individual projects as they're broken out within the CIP. They all have an individual line that projects out that time period. For the right now, it's FY19 to 24. We are currently, obviously, working on what this will look like for 20 to 25, which will come forward as part of the budgeting process. So the first item, obviously, is the project number, and then we will list it by department, brief description. Then we'll show reserves would be any previous funding that has not been expended, and then the current budget year, what we have available for us to do the funding of that particular project, and then projecting out as we look at the out years. So I can go through these individually if you would like, or I can just point you to the fact that this is, again, follows the same format that's in the CIP. I have as much or as little detail that you may choose to ask about. I'm at your pleasure. I will mention on this slide at the bottom, 24 building major maintenance. Some of the projects you saw on the previous slide, we have one kind of pot of funds for building major maintenance. This is essentially to cover any of the larger cost items for us to do improvements to the town facilities. It could be of any facility that we have that we are responsible for. And typically what we will do on each CIP process each year, we will outline within that in the documents that support this summary sheet, what are the different individual projects we're expecting to accomplish on any one given budget year. So like the community center bleachers and floor were part of this building major maintenance. The computer room upgrades for both here and the HPD, all of those would come from this bucket of funds that you see listed here.
Hey, John, are 14 and 15 tied to the Complete Streets program? Or is
Yes and no.
Okay.
14 is the section of that, the Van Buren Complete Streets that's, let me back up.
Yeah.
Van Buren Complete Streets is basically, at this point in our current CIP, 2 phases. It is listed as 2 phases for funding purposes. First phase goes from Herndon Parkway to Alabama, and that is funded through federal funds and VDOT work.
Right.
From Alabama to New Spring Street is not funded by VDOT.
Yep.
It's through HAM-SAM and MBTA funds. Because of that break in the funding, and it started from earlier on that we weren't available to get the funds to do it all as one project, that now will be bid as 2 separate projects together, quote unquote, meaning we have to be able to break apart how those dollars are spent for the 2 different funding agencies. So that's why we have the 2 phases. 14, believe it or not, is actually a third part that goes from the end of New Spring Street to, I'm sorry, my mistake. 14 is the Van Buren Complete Streets from Herndon Parkway to Spring Street. 15 is a third part that will go from the Herndon Parkway down to the south town line at the bridge. That is not currently, other than concept and design, presently being worked on, let's put it that way.
Again, just want clarification for the
No,
table in case
you're
there's.
It's a good question.
Does anybody have any questions or comments at this point?
If I can just add, John's pulling a punch there too. They didn't do the Herndon Community Center gym floor once. They did it twice.
Yes.
Because we had a leak and it was paid by insurance to be redone, so they did it.
Of course, the league had to
2
come
times.
right after the new floor.
Right.
It's the way it always works. Melissa?
John, on item 25, the sidewalk replacement, wanted to get a little bit of an update on what's happening on Fortnightly Boulevard. That's kind of a major walkway for our citizens at the senior center, at Harbor House, as well as some of our affordable housing to our shopping districts and corridors. Is that going to be included?
The current plan is that the funding as it's made available would be that the first section that's remaining would be for the Center Street Park from Station down to the WNOD Trail. And then the last part would be the Fortnightly and French, the side street there. The main reason it's prioritized that way is when we were first asked to take a look at all of the downtown sidewalks with the brick that need to be replaced. And just as a background on that, the reason those bricks are being replaced is the original bricks were what we call a concrete brick. Concrete brick does not hold up as well in the maintenance and the weather aspects. So what we're replacing it with are clay bricks, and they also have a higher density, and they also have a higher resistance for wear and tear. So the ones that are in that Center Street section are, believe it or not, in worse shape than the ones at Fortnightly. So that's why the phasing, as we have it projected right now, is the next phase would be for the remainder of Center Street down to WNOD Trail, and then all of Fortnightly right away would be in that second, that next last phase.
Thank you.
Sheila?
So while you're on sidewalks, so in the downtown on Center Street, on the town municipal side between Lynn Street and Station, are they ever going to put
That is not
sidewalks on that
slated
side?
to be improved to have sidewalk. This is
Okay.
strictly to handle the ones that are currently already sidewalk. So right now, no, that is not.
So it's
the plan to
walking
be
the
improved.
street or attempt to
Unfortunately.
cross? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. Any other questions or comments at this time? Sean?
Could you, Tom, would you mind describing 31? Eldon Monroe intersection?
Eldon Monroe included. That essentially is going to do a couple of things. The first thing is to take the northbound Monroe coming up from Van Buren and make that right-hand turn on the eastbound Eldon a better pedestrian crossing there. And the way that's going to happen is we will actually put a separation, which will be a pedestrian, what we call pedestrian refuge island, that separates that right-hand turn, so that a pedestrian coming from the church side would be able to cross over to that and be able to go from there across towards Anita's, and instead of having to kind of walk all that distance across. So that's one feature. The other feature will be, obviously, we're going to replace that traffic signal. And right now the plan is to replace the traffic signal with a single armed traffic signal. And that will allow us at the same time to put back in place the loops or the signaling capability of sensoring, so that we can phase that and get that timed better. Obviously, right now, part of the reason that's such a congestion point is it is strictly on a timer. We do not have any loops in the street that are functional right now because of all the other work that's going on in that intersection. But other than that, we're not planning on needing to take right away, because we're not actually widening it, putting turn lanes in other than the one I described.
So if that scope of work is in design now, are you waiting to design and then construct that to do the final paving of the patchwork that's out there
The
now?
reason that didn't get paved, unfortunately, was more a matter of our contractor issues this past summer. It was intended to be paved as soon as Junction Square had completed their improvements of the curb and gutter and sidewalk, and it just hit at a bad time and weather, et cetera. So the plan is that regardless of the, excuse me, regardless of this project, our plan is to go ahead and repave that, even if we have to unfortunately come back and tear it up a little bit.
And that repaving is not waiting on the developer now, it's
No.
it's contractor.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because I get asked about that stretch all the time. It's pretty
In
rough,
fact,
yeah.
the pavement will not only do that section of Eldon Street up through that intersection, but it's also intended to, correct me if I'm wrong, go all the way up Monroe to Park. No, just Monroe Hill. Okay.
That's pretty cool. Thank you.
Other questions or comments before we scoot on? Marcia?
Just a quick question regarding a lot of the improvements to sidewalks, and part of walkability is having sidewalks that are lit. Line 22, you talk about upgrades as needed. Does that include any new lighting on any of the side streets?
Honestly, the street lighting program has had a very long history to it that, quite honestly, I am not right now able to tell you I am completely sure whether the priorities are 100% correct. We are planning on going back and reevaluating everything that has been done today to evaluate what are today current priorities. Because of the history and length of it, I think some of the priorities probably have changed and haven't been updated as it probably should have been. So our task right now will be to do that. The street lighting CIP was initially started because of the desire to use and install the featured street lights, the acorns, the fluted type poles, and at the original time they were not funded the same way by Dominion. The town has a very unique arrangement.
We do.
I was just going to mention this. Go describe this.
Between the town, Fairfax County, and Dominion Energy. Because of that trilateral sort of agreement, which is hard to describe even myself, but anyway, because of that, in short form, we do get charged at a premium to put those street lights with the better features in that we want. Therefore, it became necessary to fund the desire to do that, and that was then allowing us to prioritize where those improvements would occur. So this is not just strictly any street lights where we have poor lit sidewalk. The intent is to either replace what we have that's not good, but as well, it is to obviously take care of places that may be underlit, et cetera. But just as a general, that whole program related to that particular line item needs to be I believe.
And it's a good time because the state just finished wrapping up its Virginia, the VEPCA contract, the Dominion Virginia Power and the state together, and they opened up a slew of LED lighting options under the new VEPCA contract, and they've also kind of brought what John was saying, the acorns are so woefully more expensive than normal, and they've kind of brought those price points into realism a little bit, so it gives us a good opportunity, so that's something we'll be looking at moving forward.
And the LED thing is great because it's going to save us money, and Dominion didn't want to do it, but NVRC and all of the Northern Virginia municipalities kind of strong-armed on them and said, hey, we want this, so.
The maintenance of those acorns, are they Dominion's or are they the town's?
They are actually the Dominions.
So
We cannot touch them, believe it or not, without Dominion saying that you basically bought it and they take their hands off.
Okay.
George, did you have a question?
Yeah, just briefly, and you touched on this earlier, but under number 10, insofar as it references the Shannon Park Trail. I know there's a dog park down there and a ball field. There's also an asphalt path trail that runs almost the length behind the World Gate condominiums.
Correct.
This hooks up to that, is that a town property, that asphalt trail?
The existing one on Worldgate property is not.
Okay, but that runs
All the
for the
way
vast
All
majority
the way
of
down to Van Buren.
Yeah.
Well, it ties into another one, yes. The idea is to link that so that initially the idea was to link it to Dulles Green Apartments between the tennis courts and the dog park. Unfortunately, the people that own that did not want us to tie in at that location because they were going to be required to give us easements. We were going to have to redo a bunch of the corner of the parking lot. So the compromise situation is that we'll still tie into it, but instead of at that location, it's going to take that and bring it up parallel to the access drive and the parking lot towards Herndon Parkway, and then turn north to Dulles Green Apartments on the other end of that complex. So it'll still tie in, it's just going to be a different location that was more amenable to that.
But we won't have any, if control is the right word, dominion over the trail I'm speaking of that runs behind Worldgate, that
Not
we're
that part
linking
of it.
to.
Correct.
That's fairly extensive.
Correct. No,
And,
we will not.
Okay.
Who does?
Yeah, well, I think he's saying
Worldgate.
so people using our Shandon Park Trail
Correct.
will be operating essentially at the maintenance whim for an extended distance on the way to the and that's a very logical route from Eldon Street to the Metro.
Correct.
For walking and biking, etc.
And you mentioned that it is a multi-use trail that we're
Right.
doing. But to address that question, I don't know. I would be surprised though if Worldgate is not obligated to maintain that to some degree.
A proffer or something along those lines?
I happen to know that, because I looked it up, there is proper language. They are
Okay.
committed that trail has to be open to a public connection there on the.
I would think they might want to know, how's that for subtlety, is that, they might want to know that there's an increasing burden on.
And they should be
them to
aware
maintain
because
that.
they have acknowledged that we have to actually have, we would either need an easement from them or an agreement from them, and they have agreed to an agreement that we tie into that, knowing that this is part of that linkage. So I think they are aware of it.
Okay, well, thank you.
Something we don't have to manage.
Can you speak a little bit to item 18, the bicycle facilities? It says it's currently under review and on hold.
I can, but I think I would defer that to my good friends at CD if there is anybody available that can speak to more specificity on that. The bicycle facilities and accommodations, we have something.
I could only say that we'll be coming forward with the proposed FY20 through 25 CFP that'll be coming to the Planning Commission this week, and you'll have your details in there.
I know PBAG has been heavily involved in the current talks and discussions about it. I just couldn't give you any specifics right now, so maybe we can find out and tell you.
Okay. And capital bike share isn't part of that, or?
I
I
don't
believe it is, yeah,
believe it is.
there's quite a bit to it, and I'm sorry I didn't bring my draft CIP down here tonight, I really should have.
Don't worry.
That was another night, but we'll be getting into that, that'll be coming to you relatively soon.
And we've talked with Supervisor Faust for years about, as soon as those bikes went up in Reston, I was like, what about Herndon?
Michael and Bryce met with the county last week or the week before, I think it was the week before, regarding capital bike share. And there is the potential for extending it into the town. The town would have upfront costs, and I believe right now it looks like the county might be willing to pick up the ongoing, because there are costs every year.
Yeah, I saw that in the paper.
And so we have been talking to the county about capital bike share. I think we need to have, and don't quote me on these numbers, but I think we need to have at least 3 stations in the town. And they run, I want to say 50,000. Does that sound right, Dana? Did you remember? They run about 50,000 stations.
That sounds right.
Is that the annual cost, about 50,000, or is that the
That's the
upfront?
initial
The
outlay.
upfront.
So the initial, if that holds, the initial would be about 150,000 just to get 3 in town. The question would be, would we need more than 3 to have it make sense as basically as a bicycle pattern, a transportation pattern? So that's something that we can look at.
I do have to have the draft one. And what it says right now is that multiple bicycle improvements included in the bicycle master plan are designed and funded as a part of other CIPs such as resales, et cetera. This project will implement the bicycle facility improvements that are not included. May include Center Street Station to Alabama. This is talking about on-street bicycle lanes, sharrows, bike racks, and other amenities, and may be used to support bicycle sharing, as you just mentioned. But the locations are Center, between Station and Alabama, Drainsville, quite honestly, Center between a Station and Alabama. Part of that, I believe, will be picked up through the downtown redevelopment when they do their frontage improvement. Drainsville Road from Park Avenue to Madison, Locust Street from Eldon to Center, Station Street, Center to Park Avenue, Drainsville, Herndon Parkway to North Town Line, Van Buren Street from WNOD to Park. Now, with that being said, I can't say that I know specifically what will occur on those particular locations. That gives you a general idea of what the priorities that have been established.
Yeah, I was wondering if we're planning to have a locker where you can lock your bikes up, or if that's something
I
that's
think
provided
that
by Metro.
specificity is not going to be outlined exactly. It will probably depend on the situation and the location.
And the other thing in regards to the bicycles, there's a private, in fact, where we went for the Metro, where the building, where they have the WMATA group there, the Dulles group, they're actually having their own bicycle. They're putting bike stuff in themselves, so there's some privatization there. I do know Data is working on some stuff for low-cost options in regards to that as well. I was a member of that, and I handed all the information over to the current chair. So.
That's the Dulles Area Transportation Authority?
That's correct, yeah. So they help provide low-cost rides and things like that, but that's one of the things they're looking at as well. So there's the nonprofit side, and also, so again, that might tie into whether or not it's a cost prohibitive thing, because $150,000 versus something that could be provided for by private sector money could be a win-win for everybody.
We always like other people's money.
You can get it.
That's right. Anybody else before we move on? All right, we'll just flail if you think of something. Okay, go ahead.
That essentially is all I had. The only other thing I guess we have, these are somewhat been talked about, the utility undergrounding, that, as we mentioned, is kind of at the mercy of our good friends at Dominion. I did not mention the spring restoration. This is not really downtown, but we are in the process of starting design work on stream restoration at Sugar Land Run. That will run from WNOD Trail down behind the Sugar Oaks development. We also have more sewer main relining occurring. Paving, water line replacement. Water main replacement is scheduled to occur this coming fiscal, or the end of FY19, but into 20. The Center Street will be from Locust Street to Nash, also Monroe, Eldon to Oak Street. You're aware of the private development at Junction Square. That is basically complete. Residence at Station is along Jefferson. That is underway. All of those obviously have some infrastructure and coordination that occurs through the town. Downtown redevelopment, Smart City by Vastly, that is still in the works and ongoing. We're working on details now as far as locations of cabling and locations of other features of that project. Again. Thought I had a question slide there, but anyway.
We don't do those.
Unnecessary. Jim's not here,
That
so
is
we
all I
good.
had.
I'm 35
Yeah,
hours.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anything else anybody wants to bring up or talk about? Oh, Sheila, sorry.
Yeah, crosswalks at major pedestrian pathways such as Nash crossing Old Spring Street, Sterling Road right at Crestview, because the two traffic lights, it's a pretty long way. I think it's close to, what,
Typically,
3/4 of a mile?
Right. Typically, those type of crosswalks have not, in the past anyway, been on themselves a project within the CIP. Normally, they would occur in a longer project like the one at Crestview on Sterling, which we currently do Sterling Road improvements. If there was a need or some way to determine that there was a criticality to something like that, or at Nash, I'm sure that there's a way we can determine how to make something like that happen. Currently, no, there are no just crosswalk type projects included in here.
So perhaps looking at other places where they've done crosswalks that are similar to those areas, that are not totally squared, and that go to ditches, like on 3rd Street they have. So I'll bring pictures and
No, and
perhaps.
if you would be,
Yeah.
I'll tell you the best avenue to address that is through the TEEP. Our TEEP committee
Yeah.
addresses all those sort of particular things.
Just
and-
send it to Bill.
I'll run it back up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know you did not get a
How many
satisfactory
times have
answer.
I been to?
You've been through it a few times.
I'm bringing pictures of the other ones that I have discovered around
So I
town.
guess my question is to kind of continue Sheila's comment about sidewalks. We have a lot of where the sidewalk ends and everywhere. I know it's not a secret, but are we
There are,
trying to
there are
connect some of
efforts
those?
and.
I know it's easements and it's complicated, but there's one right in front of the middle school that I just,
Right,
it's
now,
really
I can-
dangerous.
That falls within the same sidewalks and minor trail CIP. Again, similar to the building major maintenance, when you see the actual CIP sheet for FY 2024 or 25, you will find that some of the ones you're talking about have been addressed. Now, I will specifically tell you that one in front of the middle school on Locust Street has its own set of problems. One of those problems is the people that had access to that property because they owned it, didn't want it. And we can't force them to give us right away. Again, 5th Street to Eldon, also on Locust, is another section that we have planned. These are still currently, they're still in here, and we still have the intent to try to do that. My hope is, it's been a while since those were actually on the front burner. Maybe with new faces, new people, they might have a different opinion. I can't guarantee it, but we're going to try. And likewise, Locust from Center to Spring is also part of the CIP that we are trying to get, actually as a part of some parking that's involved with the downtown development. So those sort of bits and pieces aren't ignored, let me put it that way. And we try to do our best of what we can to make that happen, so.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Nice job.
Planning Commission, you got anything for us before we let you hightail it out of here?
Thank you for
Y'all don't
everything.
want to leave.
So,
Don't you want to stay? We're gonna go through
I
it
guess
again.
I would say we spent a lot of time giving you the the Eldon area, small area improvement, and so we hope
we
that you
go.
guys will take heart, and we look forward to hearing what you think.
So what's the
Yeah.
state of the union?
Unless you guys want to hear it again, you guys want to stay?
They're like, see ya.
How many times do I have to hear
Thank you,
that?
guys. We'll have a brief recess.
Nice to see you all.
Give you guys time to go.
See you on Monday. Thank you.
I'll switch over.
Remember that the recording is
Sure,
on?
as long as-
Oh, wow.
Bill, take care.
All right, take care, George, good seeing you.
Far away.
Take care, everyone. Take care, Mike. A few members of the band.
Brother-in-law he's fine now. I mean, he was in the hospital for a while, and then we had the bullets on Sunday.
I have the neighbors all lined up.
Yes.
How are you, sir? Amazing.
I woke up this morning to protect him.
That I knew,
That's great.
Well, I don't, it's just, there are lots of bigger questions, but the question to me is, what's it gonna do? What's your relationship or lack of stability? To me, you're gonna do to,
Good thing I remembered, right?
I mean, there are much bigger things out there, but
Yeah, they're.
this is my focus.
Good to see you. In case of point, that's a big two S's, but WSS. We'll muddle through.
It's another bell.
Yes.
So we have a small ding-dong family. Ding-dong family? What's a ding-dong family?
Ding dong family.
That's, I like that. We're a ding-dong family. Yes.
I follow, so I do that so you don't panic. It was one of those extra things. It was so cold.
Maybe they took out the party this year. I got you.
All right, where is everybody?
Good to see you.
I guess there's like, just not many of us. That's the thing.
You drew the short straw without gas? No, I didn't. I thought it was.
Community center is a lot of cool.
All right, 1, 2,
Hopefully we get through this real quick. As soon as we start going to close.
We're dropping one close.
I know, right? We don't have a quorum.
Absolutely.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and,
Well, we got.
once we have a quorum, we're gonna call the meeting back to order.
Can you arrest those
Siggy?
council members that are out there?
He's our sergeant at arms tonight, so yeah, why not?
Signy and Pradeep, we're gonna get
We
started.
got work to do.
All right, we are reconvened at 7:46 PM.
We are reconvening.
All right. Next week, we have one proclamation is, as you recall, last week our guests were not able to make it because of the weather, and they were mortified and are looking forward to being here next week. So Sheila's going to read that one for us. Any questions or comments on the proclamation? And it actually is Black History Month.
You realize we are scheduled for snow Monday, Tuesday.
I did see that.
Yeah, but it's like
The rain completely, it's
30%
snowing the
chance.
parade.
Well,
That'll never happen.
you know what? We can just bump it again. Don't say that. Want them to be safe. Okay, so if there's no comments, we'll move into our couple public hearings. It's The first one is resolution to consider adoption of the comprehensive plan amendment, number 1801, the South Herndon area plan that Melissa Jonas just mentioned. And we'll call him Dana Heiberg. I was trying to give you time to get there, but you're there. All right. Thank you.
As the chair mentioned, this has been an in-depth process. And we're happy to have brought this along to this point. We've had just a few highlights of the process that we engaged in today. The plan amendment was actually requested back in 2017. And we began to work that into our schedule in the early part of 2018. And we did do some outreach even before we got into the formal process. We invited every business owner in to just talk with us one-on-one. We were able to get several of them in. We just wanted to find out what their concerns, what their plans for the future, the viewpoint of the corridor and its future and so forth. We worked on analysis of infrastructure as well as looking at other constraints and opportunities. With our plans, especially in the last 10 years, we always are looking at the infrastructure with what the constraints are. We did launch into a bit more public phase. In June, we did a special public meeting for input on the concepts. We had a good turnout. We got a lot of input. Planning Commission accepted comment on July 2nd. Council, you all approved the formal initiating resolution on July 10th, and then we began into the formal process with the Planning Commission, and we had several public hearings. We did complete a variety of analysis. There's quite a number of attachments that you have with your package, but just to encapsulate the process to date, the commission did have, I believe, 5 public hearings. There were significant discussions. There were detailed discussions here in this room and in the public hearing room. The Planning Commission worked at length on this. They did reconfigure quite a number of things, and I'll get into some of the specifics as we go along. But I think it's been a very, very healthy, interactive process and leading to a better plan. Just a general overview on this. Of course, the South Herndon corridor. It's not within one of the Metro rail station areas. Obviously, it's not within a quarter mile where the intensive planning happens. It's actually not within a half mile. But as you go out a little broader, and you can see on here, it's within a mile radius of 2 different Metro rail stations. And so, we're looking at this transit and the transit corridor of the future, and how do we link in, and how can we facilitate the movement to the various forms of transit, including Metro rail. And transit's important in the overall state legislation as well, because when you're talking about linking in and having a special planning area, if you should adopt this plan, that brings us into the context where we can work with proffers. If we're not in a special planning area, such as our Metro station area, downtown area, this area would become a special area, so to speak, like that. Therefore, we can accept proffers. We're not exempted from proffers. I hope that makes sense. So the broad view, the visioning goals, I'm just going to highlight a few of these. You have all the language in front of you, but just for a couple of highlights, a vibrant mixed-use area with a diversity of housing choices, as well as attractive commercial uses, serving those nearby residential areas, pedestrian-friendly built environment, variety of multimodal options. Again, the transportation and the pedestrian and the transit and the automobiles and the walkability and so forth. Preserve and protect stable residential neighborhoods in and around the corridor. That was the first and foremost principle that would work in terms of, you'll see that, how that works with the land use plan details. Wanted to diminish impacts of background growth on roadways. We know that there's growth in the area that is impacting transportation and traffic, and we don't want to essentially have background growth and dictate the course of our planning in this corridor. We want to establish that for ourselves. And again, a multimodal transit corridor close to Metro Rail. We want to retain and strengthen high-quality bus transit. We want to provide and protect the diversity of housing. We want to preserve or enhance a non-residential tax base. So we want to sort of keep that commercial that's out there, but we can all see, I think, that that there's change is coming, has come to this corridor, and it's continuing to come. And how do we, preserve or enhance that non-residential tax base while having this corridor continue to transform and be healthy? Increase the number of residential units to provide a walkable customer base for that retail, again supporting that commercial base. Incorporate sustainable design, and that's really part and parcel of our comprehensive plan more broadly. So sometimes we get called out within individual area plans, and people don't understand that we have umbrella policies, if you will, with this sustainability. So we don't need to call it out separately within each small focus area plan. We have an entire structure of all the environmental chapter and comprehensive plan, the various structure, whether it's low impact design, water quality and quantity management, all their test-based structures. So I just want to point that out because I've had that come up a couple of times, and sometimes folks don't understand that these policies apply to this area just as they apply to other areas as well. So we want to create a gateway area, the southern gateway, especially to the town. This area does form that gateway. And so this is the land use map, and these are the tiers that are part of the recommendation. And you can see Tier 1 is towards the north end, Tier 2 is out to the west, Tier 3 is kind of in the center north, Tier 4 is to the south, and then coming up a bit past Herndon Parkway, and Tier 5 is the, we call it the southern end, just south of Tier 5 is the Coles property, which is within Fairfax County and not within the town. And I'll maybe go back to the map, but I'd like to give you a brief description of each of the 5 tiers. And then that'll be close to the conclusion, I think. What else do I have? I'll give you a bit on the process going forward after plan adoption, but the tiers. Let's talk about the 5 tiers. So you might want to look at the map while I'm talking, or you might want to look at the slide. Work either way, and I can toggle back to the map if someone feels the need. So Tier 1, north end transitional. So really at the north end, what you're looking at is kind of a transition into the heritage area. We also, with Tier 1, we also have the Brookdale Gardens apartment property, and that's part of Tier 1. But the intersection is constrained. We have concerns about preserving that affordable housing that exists there. And that was part of the dialogue at the Planning Commission level. That's concerned to keep that in Tier 1 rather than putting it in earlier in the process. We had that property within more of a higher density, sort of a really encouraged redevelopment type of approach. But that evolved as the Planning Commission worked on this. So that's Tier 1. Tier 2.
Dana, just to clarify, is Tier 1 includes Birkdale Apartments, the condos, offices kind of behind Mellow Mushroom, and the hotel across the street? Are those properties?
That is exactly right.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I'm looking at what I think I am.
Thank you for pointing that out. That Birkdale Apartments property, as you said, those business condominiums, I think you're all familiar with those. There's quite a group of them there at Herndon and Sterling to these, what is that, the west side. And then the east side, as you said, extended stay hotel, very stable use, has a nice buffer. It does immediately join the Heritage Preservation Area, so that's a concern. But it's a relatively, compared to the other uses in the corridor, that's of quite recent vintage.
So, why is not increasing the density in the Birkdale Apartments area conducive to preserving affordable housing? Why are we saying we don't want it to redevelop at all, so we want to keep the density at that same level, so there's no incentive, or is there some reason why affordable housing is only less dense? I'm not sure I understand that.
I think the intention of the recommendations is that as an existing affordable housing resource, that to really provide and protect that, continue to protect that as an affordable option, rather than redevelop that property.
Okay, thanks.
So I'm going to go to Tier 2, if that's, so Tier 2 is transitional urban residential. And maybe I'll just go back to the map. So Tier 2 to the west there, we notice the thin mark property that, if you're not familiar with, is behind, if you will, the former giant site. South of Herndon Parkway, adjacent to Four Seasons neighborhood, adjacent to the county line on the south. So there's Tier 2. So what we're looking at Tier 2 is townhouses and 2-over-2 style of development, which is a 2-level townhouse over a 2-level townhouse. Future density is greater than single-family type zoning districts provide a transition from existing and future Elm Street corridor. So with Tier 5, which I'll get into, you have a more intensive mixed-use type of development. So between that and the stable Four Seasons neighborhood to the west, as well as the county neighborhood to the south, Tier 2 kind of forms that transition where you would have a townhouse type of intensity, as the policy says, transitions to adjacent development and potential development, open space, streetscape, and other Tier 2 design guidelines will provide for guidance. So that is the flavor of Tier 2. Tier 3 extends from the southern property line of the Verizon site, if you happen to be familiar with that. And up to Alabama Drive, and then on the east side of Herndon Street, it extends farther. We have some properties along the Herndon Middle School site, which are relatively shallow compared to most of the properties along the corridor. And they're also fairly small in width. And so Tier 3 really is commercial. We're looking for a mix of reuse and redevelopment over the long term, and these sites can provide commercial uses for future residents of new mixed-use development. So, you know, they would support the future development, and the future development would support them to be viable retail. Future densities are 0.3 FAR if there's any commercial services and 0.5 FAR if there's any commercial office. Tier 4, okay, if you look back down to the southern end of the corridor at the east side, and then coming up with the two properties just north of Eldon and Herndon Parkway on either side, that's Tier 4. We call this South Eldon Neighborhood Mixed Use, and this is a really significant redevelopment. We're trying to incentivize vertical or horizontal mixed use. Future densities provide for retention of commercial square footage and the inclusion of multifamily units. We're looking at a density, it could be 24 units per acre, inclusive of any bonus density. And you're going to see this phrase, inclusive of any bonus density, in Tier 4 and Tier 5. And what do we mean by that? Well, what we mean is we're trying to incentivize an inclusion of affordable units within the development. But at this time, we don't have that bonus density in place. We have to go through a separate process to be enabled to do that. And so that's kind of where you see this language of inclusive of any bonus density. You'll see that something else. So, transitions to adjacent development, redevelopment, open space, structured parking, and other Tier 4 design guidelines. So again, Tier 4, really, it's a vertical mixed-use concept primarily. It could be some horizontal, but generally, you know, a ground floor retail with a residential above and that type of thing. That's what we say vertical plan to speak. So Tier 5 is located south of Herndon Parkway. Forms the gateway to the town on the west side. And again, vertical mixed use. This would be the highest intensity within the plan, the highest intensity tier. We would try to retain the commercial square footage that's there today. Obviously, it's going to be reconfigured. It's going to look different, different kinds of stores. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but we want to retain our commercial value, but we would have a vertical, dense residential above up to 45 units per acre, inclusive of any bonus density. So we're looking for really high quality mixed use redevelopment, and this is something that incentivizes that. We've, you know, in our early talks with many of the property owners as we could talk to, we did sit down with Edens, which owns the property. They've done a lot of this mixed use development, such as Maryfield, and I believe they had strong interest. They don't have, you know, immediate plans as far as we know, but we had good discussions, and they seem very positive about this area. They see the transition occurring over the long term. They see the broader picture of this Dulles Corridor environment that this corridor is located in. So that's Tier 5. So now I'm going to zoom out to the broad policy map of the comprehensive plan, so a little more elemental. And this is simply the existing land use map. We have the business corridor designation on a lot of this, which is the pink. which is really just kind of a status quo, low density, 0.5 FAR, parking in front, building in the back, very suburban. It's worked fine over the decades, but it's really a dated type of approach, we believe, and I think I would say the Planning Commission recommendation is that that time has come to really revisit that. So that's your map that's in place today, and then you can also see the office parks and flexible space on the Finmark property to the west there. Again, not viable. We're seeing that the office parks that are freestanding as such, they're just not viable in this current environment. All these mixed-use centers at Metro Rail and at other locations where you're seeing the office park is integrated into a mixed-use environment that both the employers and the employees really are expecting that type of environment product. So you saw that issue, and then you can see the adaptive area residential on the Brookdale Apartments site and the adaptive area on the Dulles Van Meter site there at the south end. That's the Dulles Van Meter Apartments. And previously, so those two areas were already adaptive on the existing plan, and here's the proposal. So we make the entire corridor, or a large swath of the corridor, just adaptive area for greater flexibility. And then the two properties to the west will be the orange, which is the adaptive area. So again, we are encouraging redevelopment, but it's adaptive area attached residential. So we're really encouraging just the residential form of redevelopment. And so that's zooming out to the general map designations. And I'm about to wrap it up here. The adopting resolution does include recommending comprehensive plan map and text changes, of course. It has a full description for each of the tiers. So I did try to walk you through it a little bit, but there's a good bit of meat to it there. The Planning Commission recommending resolution, of course, is attached to your staff report. And I have one more point to cover, and then I can take questions. Just wanted to offer you the typical question we always get was, what is the next step? If we adopt this plan, how do we get to the full sort of implementation, so to speak? And so, from the point of plan, if you were to adopt this, we would be looking to create and adopt new zoning districts to implement the plan. There'd be an urban townhouse zoning district. There'd be one or two sort of mixed-use zoning districts to support those concepts that I described within the tiers. The zoning ordinance amendment process is usually 4 to 6 months because, of course, we have Planning Commission and Town Council public hearings. And then the applicants could come in at that point and apply for zoning map amendments. And then the rezoning process is typically 6 to 9 months, and of course that includes public hearings. Site plan is generally administrative and technical, but that's about a 6-month process through the bonding and so forth. The ARB is 2 to 4 months, building permits. So underground development, perhaps late 2020 and beyond. And that really concludes my staff report, and I think what I'll do, if the mayor is okay with this, I'll take it back to the recommended tiers map, just in case council wishes to discuss, and that's all I have.
If I can just add one thing, because Dana glossed over the bullet point because he kind of jumped it. Water and sewer is a critical element to this, and this has been scrubbed for supportability under the law, what we have planned with water and sewer going forward. So, again, I just want to make sure that it gets underscored, that you can't get too wildly crazy because water and sewer is really a constraining factor, and so this is supportable under our plans for the water and sewer.
got to be piped correctly.
And if I could amplify that, we did look at other options and higher density options and some of the other tiers. And part of this sort of arriving at this part, well, the staff as well as the plan commission, was the fact that, you know,
We couldn't,
not as much intensity in every tier.
we couldn't move the necessary product.
Right.
Let's go that way.
And
Which is kind of
Dana,
essential.
if I can jump in here, Dana wasn't at the orientation, but this gets back to when I was speaking about balance, you know, trying to look at these various areas and strike that balance between utilities and traffic and the other constraints that you may be facing. And one of the ways that we looked at this, and the Planning Commission looked at this, was really where can we infuse the density that we do have so that it will be the biggest bang for its buck, basically from a corridor standpoint. And from that, if you look at, let me use the little cursor here. If you look at 5, and then this is a 4 up here, and you have 4 here, what you're seeing there is you're seeing parcels that have access on multiple streets. They're fairly regularly shaped. They actually create a gateway because of their location as you roll through that corridor on Eldon Street. And they're also, in a couple cases, older shopping centers that they're doing okay right now. I mean, they've got tenants, but we're seeing the wear and tear. And so by infusing density in those locations, that density that we have and can utilize, it is thought that we can encourage perhaps the redevelopment of those sites with the mixed use, and then those smaller properties that you see in Tier 3, that would be more of an organic renewal based on the additional density that you're getting in those key sites. So when you have, say, a 5 or a 4 redevelop, you get that vertical density, you've got people living above the ground floor retail, then that will be a driver for those smaller properties to refresh and possibly redevelop or just recreate themselves into a new type of retail, a new style of structure. So that was really the thought about where we were putting density and where we were situating mixed use.
Sydney. A lot of the comments that came from Fairfax County Park Authority and some of the other organizations, and I see now that they came in July, so you probably thought these all through, is that they all seem to see that there was not enough recreational free space. I'm not sure how we can incentivize. I mean, I assume we're not going to buy any more recreational area, and it looks to me like there's a lot there, and so I don't understand their comments. But are you planning to infuse the density requirements with some sort of recreational space requirements as well?
Well, a couple of things. I want to address that, but I also want to address the fact that in their comments, the Park Authority especially, they really didn't seem to recognize a number of things that we have programmed in our CFP, and I did have a dialogue with them, but I'm not sure what happened. But so there's a little bit of lack of recognition that, you know, we're investing, we're doing a number of CFP park projects, we're doing community center expansion, you know. So there's that aspect of it. But in terms of, I think, building it into, it's a very good point. They call it, I think they call it the Urban Parks Framework or something, a catch term. And so that's the notion that, you know, into these mixed-use centers and what have you, with the vertical redevelopment and so forth, you want to mix these quality spaces, whether it's a plaza, whether it's, you know, pocket park, just various ways to sort of infuse some of that Parks and Recreation element. And I think that was a good comment, and I think we would certainly be continuing to look at that when we, get farther down the road, and we're actually looking at development applications and some of the zoning language that we're going to be looking at.
The zoning language will look at that, and I would add that when you see any type of open space with redevelopment in parcels the size we're talking about here, you're not going to see them building, baseball fields. But you will see perhaps a plaza area. You might, and the higher density residential that you might see on top of some of this new retail would probably also potentially have some amenities, recreational amenities built into them.
But we're not in any way specifically encouraging this, it's just, it will have to do with what they propose? I mean, how would we make that happen?
You would see recreational features built into new residential development. What we're talking about is the internal, it would be an apartment building, and right now the market really doesn't have, there's just not a market out there for something that is bereft of such amenities.
Yeah. I saw the plans for 555 Herndon Parkway, and it looked like they had planned to build a
swimming pool on top of the parking deck
and they
other
had,
features.
big wide plazas, so.
Right.
Is that?
So you would expect to see some elements of that. Now, that being said, what you would also see, and you'll see this with 555 Herndon Parkway, is that they do need to come through the rezoning process. And what you will see is you will see some proffers, probably, for recreational features. We have a cash contribution in the proffer statement for 555 Herndon Parkway. And you probably would be seeing something like that for these redeveloped parcels that have the higher density.
But when they do a proffer, isn't it something that has to be open to everybody? It can't just be for that?
No, there are two different ways that you see proffers for mixed-use developments these days. One is they actually state how much per unit they're going to invest in on-site amenities. And those can be everything from benches to swimming pools, barbecue and outdoor eating areas. So they will actually place that in the proffer, and they may say, we're going to spend at least $1,900 per unit on on-site amenities such as that. And then they also frequently will say, and we will contribute to the town or the county, wherever you're located, X amount of dollars per unit or X amount of dollars per office square footage towards public open spaces or recreational amenities.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Also, I think everybody's aware, but maybe not, that the middle school is under a plan with the county. In the park bond, a couple of years ago, there was planning money put aside, and it's going to be new turf fields, right? And like, it's going to become a county park because it's huge and it's really underutilized right now.
We're in conversation with them regularly, but nothing is imminent. That conversation is ongoing.
And we do have Alabama Park right in the planned area, just abutting it to the west as well, which is a good size open space.
Sheila.
So this doesn't have much direction to developers. Are we not concerned we're going to get into the same many decades that we've had in the downtown? And then finally we got form-based codes, so people knew what they could get. So when the council turns over every 2 years, people can actually get something done.
And that's, Sheila, that's what I was going to bring up to you. The only major criticism I've heard about this is, like, what does adaptive area mean? Can we be more specific?
Because we've had this downtown, I've been here since '90, and we've been trying to get it done. fingers crossed, but every time we get close, it goes down the tubes and then we change councils.
Well, there's,
Yeah, so.
Well, not this time.
I mean,
But yeah.
for this particular
Before
area
from-
plan, this is smaller than most of our area plans. And you have the map which will be added to the comprehensive plan, but you also have the description of the tiers. But as Dana was saying, the next step would be to write the zoning. And you would see more direction in that zoning.
Because then,
But even the tier descriptions, I mean, they're quite, I think they really do provide a good framework. So they set the framework for that zoning language. And I think they offer a lot of specificity that perhaps other, something like an adaptive area designation doesn't really do. It tells you generally.
well, and I think that's why we're gonna succeed with this current downtown plan, because we did go through many hurdles to make sure.
It was predictable.
Exactly. Otherwise, you know, go out and put this really nice thing together and then.
And a lot of that has to do with going with form and not just with things such as floor area ratio, which to a lot of people, they can't imagine what that is. Now, the developers know,
Right.
but
Yeah.
most residents don't understand how that transforms into the built environment.
And past history shows council members didn't either, so we want to make sure everyone understands what we're talking about.
Good point. Anybody else have a question or a comment? So I have a question. I'm looking at the Planning Commission resolution land use designations. Most of it is just adaptive area, right?
That's
And then those two chunks, which are 1 and 2, correct, are, well, the one part of 1, where Burkdale is adaptive area residential,
Yes.
right? So over on the corner, the closest corner to World Gate in number 4, right now that is affordable I don't know if it's affordable or workforce. I think we need to make sure we're using the right terminology, but I know that those are more affordable dwellings there, and that's now not going to be a residential. Are we trying to shift that around? I know that's a concern and it's going to come up.
That's an odd situation which we have all inherited from some past that we don't fully understand.
60s, yes.
That is zoned. That is zoned commercial. And
That whole space.
Dulles Glen?
Dulles
Yeah.
Glen
Yep.
is zoned
Yes.
commercial.
Yep. That was done with the
Well, it
county
sure
prior.
is if you look at the other map.
Because we didn't have a planning commission until, what, the 60s?
70s, we took over our own planning.
Ah.
So
That's the problem.
that's an unusual situation. But the tier does describe it as allowing residential, allowing mixed use.
Okay.
So actually, when
Okay.
you get to the tier, when you get to the zoning, then you're going to,
We can get
See that.
specific about that sort of thing. Because that's a fairly large complex with a lot of families in it, so I just want to make sure we're mindful of that.
Has its own traffic light.
I know.
More than one.
Yeah.
I would like to add, and I know there's been some interest, and you may have heard of some interest, Tier 2, which really was the catalyst for a lot of this, because of the fact that a developer has purchased that, those existing 1980s office buildings, one-story office buildings. And they were interested in doing a comprehensive plan amendment, but the Planning Commission, I think wisely, believed that really we needed to look at this more holistically and as a true corridor. And the Tier 2 does speak to transitions, and it does speak to 2 over 2 and townhouses. The concept here and the reasoning for it is we're seeing the isolated office parks of the 80s dying. We even know engineering firms that are located in such office parks, and when they've offered people positions, they've had people turn them down because the environment around it's not mixed use. They're looking for something other than that in their workplace. So we understand that that is probably not a viable use in the future. The comp plan amendment we're looking at right now does say that a transitional residential would be appropriate. The concept would be having a 2/2 next to the more intensive Eldon Street corridor, and then transition to a townhouse product as you move closer to the townhouses in the Four Seasons. So that's a little more information about that particular parcel.
I think that makes sense. I mean, when you look at it, it's like, why was there an office building right there in the middle of all these townhouses? But we have a lot of people here from Four Seasons who I know have some concerns about it. And if you guys have, I'm sure you have comments and questions. I know a work session, we don't do that, but please email us or come next week and let us know your specific concerns, because it could impact, especially those townhouses right there. Any other questions or comments? So next week, we will be considering if we're going to adopt this comprehensive plan amendment, which is the 30,000-foot view, so that we can start the process that Dana outlined to get more specific with form and be more predictable. Like, this isn't going to help developers very much, but the next
Right.
step will. Okay. Just making sure I understand. This is a lot.
Can we make sure that is made clear in the presentation?
Yeah.
So that if we have people in the audience, so that they understand that more is coming?
Yeah. Almost like opening up the budget talks. It's not the budget,
Yeah.
it's just opening it up so we can have the conversation.
Can I get just a real quick comment? We were here Friday with this presentation, and I'm not sure you didn't get a chance to stay for the whole part, but that transition concept was awesome. I think that was just a very awesome concept, because that's a concern in our community, that at least they're looking at other townhouses, not a business right there, and then you got the business facing, and I know there's some plans on that giant shop, so that they can take convention. So they did an awesome job.
Oh, glad to hear that. Glad you were able to be there.
Yeah, thank you.
You're going to know this better than we will by the end. So make sure you show up next week so we can keep us in mind. Okay, well, if any other questions or concerns come up among the council, make sure you get those to the town manager, and well, I'm sure we'll see you and some of your neighbors next week. Thanks for coming, and thanks for listening to us.
Thanks.
All right, it's exciting. The next public hearing is the resolution to solicit public comments during the development of the town manager's proposed FY 2020 budget. Comments received by council on this item have been entered into the record, and Bill Ashton is going to walk us through it.
It's just our annual event where we ask the public to come out and inform us while we're putting the budget together. So we have that up front, as opposed to once we deliver a proposed budget, they're not out trying to get us to change it at that point. So it's just, we're encouraging folks to come out and tell you all what they want to see in their budget. And so that we can kind of create this and take into account those concerns. I'll set the table with just a brief couple sentences about where we are in the process, and then turn it over to our friends and neighbors to
This is the official beck and call for people to come in.
So what you can do at the end of this, you either adopt, this doesn't end the budget discussion, obviously we're gonna come back, people are still invited to come and talk in front of you. You can continue at one more session just to have another budget hearing, just to get solicit comments at the end of February, that's fine too. But at the end of February, I would like, shut it down, they can still come to public comment at the public hearings and talk about it. But by that point, we are deep in the balancing weeds.
Yeah. In the past, what's happened is, well, sometimes we've continued it, but it's perfectly fine to pass it next week if people are content with that, and then I can make sure that it's in my remarks every time to ensure that I say to the public, we want to hear from you about the budget. It doesn't have to be this
And we'll still put it on
specific
social
public
media
hearing.
too.
Yeah.
We'll still pound social media saying all of your comments are always welcome.
And this also, requires being the legal notices and all of those other ways that people find out about what's going on. So, other questions or comments, Bill?
Just for clarification, this is not the first reading, correct?
No.
Yeah, okay, just want to
There's
make it.
nothing to read yet.
I know that, but I want to let everyone know that this isn't like, oh my God. So it's not the first reading.
I don't
it's
think
just-
you want to read what all these crazy people have submitted to me. Not yet.
Cindy, sorry.
Scrub it first.
Like, what? It wasn't me.
Me?
Pretty good, you have something? No, okay. All right. Well,
Use the
if there are no questions or comments on that, we'll, we're already at the consent agenda. Okay, so there's several items, there are a couple items, and they are all, once again, the appointments that we discussed last week. Are there any questions or comments on that? All right, that brings us to roundtable. Who wants to start us off? Cindy.
I want to get it right out there. Happy Lunar New Year. It's the year of the pig, and I think we're all very happy to know that.
I'm excited.
I know.
Y'all throw a pork butt on the
Yes.
smoker
I
this
have a
weekend
pork
just to
shoulder in my,
celebrate.
yeah. You're the pig.
Celebrate.
I got a very nice comment on Facebook, which I had been off Facebook for a couple days, and one of my friends who hadn't been in town for a really long time posted, and he said, I will quote, "Wow, it's been a really long time since I've been down Eldon Street. I love what Herndon's doing. It looks great." We hear a lot of negatives, and that just made my heart go, yay. I have a little question about the constituent letter that we got, the email asking if we could put the police information online. Is there any information on that?
Yeah, we're asking some indulgence for a few months. Maggie's doing her overhaul of general orders, and at the end of it, probably about six or so month process, we'll discuss it at that point. It's still open to FOIA. We will still respond to FOIA. That gentleman got a copy almost immediately.
He seemed very grateful.
So-
So that's good. Thank you. Cool.
Billy.
Well, first of all, happy birthday to Councilmember Friedrichs.
Is today your birthday?
25.
Today?
Today.
I'm so sorry that you're here.
I'm so happy to be here. I
So,
enjoy spending my time with you.
So appreciate not only you being here, but the sacrifices you're making, especially on a birthday, because you have some birthday cake or possibly a pulled pork sandwich, because it's big. And Wool Boy Hot Chicken is open, grand opening. They did a soft opening, but they're now officially open, so I want to wish them well. And
we have an invitation to the real grand
Yes.
opening ribbon cutting,
March
and I am
4th.
not certain I will be able to be there.
Correct.
So,
We'll do our best.
Vice Mayor, you're
Roll
on.
the scissors.
But hopefully I can make it.
And then, just that sorry.
Wait, no, what am I thinking?
No, it's quite all right. And then, really appreciate the joint session. I enjoy being with, working with the planning commission, having the joint sessions. I wouldn't mind, doing more if that was something.
I agree.
And others as well, even if it's within our bailiwick, whether it's BZA or HPRB. Always welcome to sit down, even if they want to have us at their work sessions. I have no problem with that. But just letting you know, I enjoy that because I think it's a good use of our time.
I agree. Okay, who's next? Pretty, is everybody done?
So-
Wait, was Pretty, did you have anything for roundtable?
No,
I usually
sorry.
call on the Vice Mayor last, but it doesn't really matter.
I do not have anything exciting to share. Happy birthday to
I didn't realize today was the day I would have brought cupcakes or something. Sorry. It's okay. All right, let's hurry up because it's Cindy's birthday.
I'm sure she has better things to do than sit around us.
So, I'm just so sorry, Captain Ansengruber isn't here because you're the pig. When we were doing the pig thing on the town council was passing that, and these people brought We Love Pigs, he was so excited. So every time I see him this year, I'm gonna congratulate him that it's the year of the pig. So make sure y'all do too, because he loves that. So, do we know what's going on with Robert's carpets? They look like they've even battened up the hatches even worse.
No.
Okay, so the town knows nothing. I just thought I would ask.
I mean, that's a good question.
I keep getting asked.
I'm hearing a lot of, wow, downtown looks so run down. And
I can put a question out to Dennis about Roberts for you.
Okay.
It's all comparative though, apparently.
Well, you just send them that comment.
And the building that no longer has scaffolding on it, across from Jimmy's CFT, looks awesome.
Yeah, it looks
I mean, they've just got
great.
just a little bit more to go, and you see a few ropes,
looks
but
great.
it looks so much better. It was
It really
looking
looks nice.
so disheveled down there, and that just really helps. But I have a question about the grates that are around the trees. I'm calling them grates where the trees are. Are those discolored? That's how they're supposed to. They just look really, because I've seen them in other places and they didn't look that, okay.
I mean, I don't know specifically, but from looking at them myself, they look like they're pre-intended to corrode in that rust color patina. Want to use your arts district word?
That is well
so
put,
fancy.
John.
We call that character.
I'm just gonna ask the same thing, Sheila.
Okay, because I just want to go down there with the Brillo pad every time I walk by. There's too many of them. I just don't think I could do it. And I will say, I just got back from a visit with my mom in Alabama. When I cruise around Herndon, after cruising around down there, of course, they don't pay any taxes. We keep our place so clean because everywhere I went, there was litter everywhere. So if you think we're trashy, please drive on out of town, get out of Fairfax County. I was just appalled at all the paper cups and I mean, it was just everywhere. Wow. If I wasn't hanging out with my mom, I would have been out there with a bag, but we do a very good job.
Save your energy for the Brillo
Right.
palette.
Yes, I'll save it for the Brillo pads, but, you know, we just really do keep this place spiffy, and it's really nice. I mean, sometimes when the wind's up for, you know, certain times of year, even me, I noticed. In fact, there was a big black trash bag in my back, a brand new one. It just, and I was gonna go out and it rained, so then I was gonna go out and it was gone, and then I saw it in another part of the yard and it was raining, so eventually I'll get it.
And if I can just say that, it's great work from the public works operations
Yeah.
folks who are out there working that all the time, but it sets a tone to create a culture where that is what we were looking for.
Yes.
And it's funny you say that,
Yes.
because I was driving up Herndon Parkway up by Shandon the other day too, and I had the same thought about how this is not, there's like junk laying everywhere.
Yes.
And it's, I think, goes to the attention they place on it, and it resets the culture of the town to where they go out and live up to it.
And I really appreciate it, and that's why I like living here, so.
That's it? Okay, thank you. I had a few things to share. One, I ran across on Twitter, somebody from NBC4 was saying that tonight is the first night that the metro trains are going to be doing the test rides from Wheelie out toward the airport. So that is starting. And I just realized that my note auto-corrected. I said on phase 2 west of Wheelie, and it auto-corrected to Weasel. Luckily, these are just my notes.
My GPS calls it wheelie.
Yeah, I can't ever say.
My GPS is white.
Yes, mine does too, like the coyote. So the winter market, you brought that up last week, and we've had a couple of meetings with John Boyler from the Chamber and Melissa Hiley. The Chamber is taking that event on. They are super organized. I mean, wow, they are setting up subcommittees. The date is definitely December 14th. It's the second Saturday in December.
And the train show, which appears a week earlier on the calendar, is also going to be on the 14th. And
Yes, there's an error in our town calendar. If anybody asked you about it, I don't know how that happened, but whatever, it happens. But so those two events are really going to have great synergy. I think it's going to be, I don't know the exact times, but like starting at noon all day. It's going to be great, so stay tuned. Joe from Arts Herndon is part of the committee, but it's not going to be an Arts Herndon event. It's going to be a chamber event because that makes some things easier. So anyway, but they are really on the ball. I was floored.
I was floored by their organization today and what they came in and ready. And I'm working with Cindy, who's done more events in the downtown than
Cindy,
I do.
who knows everything.
She knows everything. She's the oracle of Cindy, as I call her earlier. Yes, the oracle
Well,
of the
she
downtown.
had some preparation too, because she fleshed it all out a couple of years back,
Yes.
so.
Yeah, so very exciting, and as they asked if they could come, once they had their bearings more, come to the council and give us a little update on what's going on, and we said absolutely not, no. So they probably will come, I would guess March or April.
Yeah, later on.
Yeah, so anyway, very exciting, it's gonna be a great event. I've had a couple of different people approach me about becoming a sister city with Herndon. I don't know what the town's role is in a sister city thing. I know that we had Runnymede, and I think didn't you say that's sort of fallen apart? It's not really
The whole
official
group
anymore.
in England is.
So, one of them is H.K. Lee from the Taekwondo place. Remember when he came up with visitors and we gave certificates and things about a year ago? They mentioned it then about being a sister city with the county or city where he is from, or where all of these visitors come from. And I had not thought about it in months, and they contacted me wanting to get together to just say what they had looked at, and so that I could bring it to the council. I've got to flesh out with staff, like, is it a council thing? Do we need to get a group of citizens that's interested or what? That meeting is next Tuesday morning, I think, so I'll let you know what comes of that. The other one I'm also pretty excited about and I've been meaning to bring it up, and it just hasn't, I figured I've got two sister cities, I might as well bring them both up. Kwame Alexander works with, see, I knew you'd be on board. That was easy. No, so Kwame Alexander is the Newbery Award winning author that wrote the book in Herndon and still lives in Herndon, but not the town of Herndon. He has done Leap for Ghana as his nonprofit, and they built a library and a clinic over in a village in Ghana. And he goes every year, and they have a great relationship, and I've met the queen mother of this village several times. And she's like, girl, we need to be a sister village. So I'm interested in having that conversation if the council thinks it's interesting. I think we have a cool story to tell about literacy if we decide to tell it, because of the library that they built in Ghana. The Newbery book was written here. The Fortnightly Club started the first library, 100 years ago. The Imagination Library with Rotary, I just think there's a potential to do something cool. And if we keep doing the book festival, so they are not as organized as H.K. Lee at this point. They just keep saying, we should do it. What do we do? So maybe H.K. Lee will help me understand what we can guide them with.
And perhaps we should talk with our sister city group here, because they're the ones that have the foundation all laid. I mean, it is a whole laid out. It wasn't the town of Herndon.
Yeah.
This was the sister city group.
Well, that's why I wanted to throw it out, because I knew that you were involved in that back in the
because
day.
I used to be on their board.
Oh, wait, do you have a third one?
Yeah, talking about sister city, can I share something?
Sure.
Because I've been approached since I'm originally from Nepal, and when this news actually broke out that, I became a council member, a lot of people actually reached out saying, you have a connection between those two countries because you were born there and you are, here. That concept of sister city came, and actually one of the mayor from one of the cities in Nepal was in Herndon about 2-3 weeks ago. He just visited me, and he was also, talking about if we can do it, and I said, I'll discuss with the council, and it was completely out of my head. Thank you for reminding. And actually so I have been approached by some of the towns in Nepal also to, build that relationship, and I said, yeah, let me talk to the town, because I've never heard anything as such in Herndon. But Fredericksburg has a sister city relationship with one of the towns in Nepal.
Oh, really?
Yes, one of the mayor from Nepal came, and then they did that. And just a week ago, another town from Nepal got sister city relationship with city of New Jersey.
City? Jersey City?
Jersey City, yes. Jersey City has a sister relationship as well.
One of the things that had been done for years, which I took advantage of, when you're a sister city, you're not just, it's just not a name, and maybe somebody shows up now and then. It's an actual cultural experience where we had people here that opened up their homes and the folks would come over. There was fundraising, and when the people came over from England, they didn't spend anything on room and board. Everything was taken care of. They took care of our trips, everything, and when they came over here, we had places for them to stay. We took care of their meals. We took care of all of their trips to museums and things like that. So it's not just this, oh, we're going to be a sister city. You've got to find a group of people in the community, unless the town's going to bankroll it, and then you're going to assign staff or council members to be able to do this.
Ambassadors and
I mean,
emissaries.
it's not just a little, it's not just a name
So it's
tag.
probably not feasible to take on all of this, right?
You need to find the group in town that's going to,
Well, I just wanted to throw out the idea, and maybe Sister City sounds pretty involved and not a town thing. Maybe be thinking about, is there some other way we could connect with these different communities? It maybe doesn't have to be so official, but we could do something. Anyway, I just want to throw that out there, and maybe after you guys have thought about it for a while, we'll have an idea. But I am meeting with HK
will
Lee
find
next
out
week.
more actually how they are,
Okay.
because it should not be just a name. That's exactly what I told them. It's not just about we have a relationship by name, but there should be some, exchange, cultural exchange, and also, maybe it can enhance the tourism industry from both of the country and town, people visit, and all those things have to be in place.
That's right.
So let's see how this relationship with other cities are going.
Yeah.
And based on that, how much engagement city has and all those things, and maybe based on that, we can make an informed decision on that.
And we have people right here, including myself, that have been on that board that have done this. I mean, Harlan Reese and Midge did that numerous times, our previous mayor.
So I
Wilson,
have a question for our town attorney. If Sheila and Pradeep and I were to get together to talk about sister cities, is that town business? We can't really do that, right?
Yeah, town, and you can do it, but it's a
It just has to
meeting,
be
it's a public
an
meeting.
advertised meeting, okay. Well, maybe we need to do that, we'll see. Okay, and Pradeep, I was gonna ask you, I could do this, I just thought of it since you brought up Nepal. I know we do, African American History Month and other things like that. Is there a Nepalese American Month or anything like that? And we would love to have a proclamation to recognize the Nepalese community, because it is a really big deal that you're one of, I've told everyone, he's one of only 4 in the whole country that's elected.
Is that part of the Pacific Asian
I don't know.
American group, or no?
Nepal?
Yeah.
It's an Asian country, right? It's
Because that includes Pakistan, it's a huge India, it includes a lot of.
Well, I just wanted to bring it up to you because I'm
countries.
sure
Yeah.
you're getting a
Yeah.
lot of outreach from people, and there might be something that comes up, so just let us
Yeah,
know.
I'm also waiting on how, people want to get recognized, and if there is something as a town we can do to, make
Yeah.
people empowered and feel welcome,
Yeah.
then definitely I'll bring something.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
thank
All
you.
right. And finally, I was just going to mention about the proclamations. I know there was a question about the process of who's reading what. The clerk actually did some research on it around the Commonwealth and got a bunch of feedback from clerks. And I am shocked to find out that in almost every jurisdiction, the mayor reads every single one of them.
Oh my God.
So I would like to not implement that. In some places, it's the town clerk. I was just shocked, and so I asked.
The town clerk do it, yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Amina and I don't want to read them all. So what I've tried to do is, people ask me if they're interested in one, when, I knew you'd like volunteer month, all these sorts of things. If you bring one to us that you want to do, of course you'll get to read it. I even looked back since Tom Russ was mayor, this has been the way it's sort of gone. So I don't really have a big dog in the fight, but I think that we're going to continue to do it this way if there's no objection, because it's worked pretty well for a long time. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And if you want to duke it out about proclamations, I'm happy to do that.
We all really wanted to read the African American History Month one. I think that's why it came.
Is it long enough to split up?
No, it's splitting it up is
Yeah.
really awkward.
Okay.
I don't like doing it.
All right, cool. Well, if you have any more thoughts on that, just let me know. But I was really like, I don't want to do what everybody else does because I don't want to read all those things. So that is all I have. That's so weird. That's everybody.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, we do have, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot you, Mr. Town Manager.
You don't forget me, I'm good.
Okay, sorry.
I was trying to grab it
We're
from
good.
Sheila.
So, but we have a need for a closed meeting. So I will ask for, and it shouldn't take long, I should ask for a motion to go into closed meeting as provided under section 2.23711A, Code of Virginia, to consult with legal counsel regarding actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the council. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we'll give it for you.
Bill and Sheila, all those in
Geography
favor say
now.
aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, and how many of us are there? Just 5.
Five.
Okay, we'll take a
Tomorrow on
brief
a
break.
Geography Now, which is a
And,
YouTube channel.
staff is off the hook.
They go
Thanks for coming, guys.
alphabetically All the countries.
Oh, they
It
wanna
takes them 3
stay?
years, 2 to 3 years. Nepal is tomorrow. So they're at Nepal. So they do a 15-minute briefing on every single place. Their history,
Sydney, I wish I could
geography.
say this was your
I'll send you a
surprise
link to
birthday
it.
party.
Sure.
But it's interesting because I watched that Ireland and I go, oh, and then the funny thing is at the end he goes, okay, so in closing, like this group went here, this group got conquered, this group did this, Nepal, like, but it will talk about, I'm sure all the, because they do a pretty good job, because he actually goes to the country and asks about, asks, it's called Geography Now.
Oh, okay.
So it started with, what's it, Armor, I think, like last week was Nauru, because Nauru is the smallest, it's one of 2 countries without a capital. Switzerland's the other one. It's de facto is burned. But Nauru is so small because it's 8 square miles. There is no capital.
Oh, wow.
And it's in the middle of the, Pacific Ocean. It's part of my